know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show. Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
We don't get into a lot of mascot talk on the CJ show, but we have to acknowledge the newest member of the NHL mascot family, C-Boy, the newest mascot for the Seattle Kraken. It's kind of looking like a sea troll. The Kraken were trying their absolute best to keep the mascot under wraps. They had all these different videos where I think they had these kids seeking out advice from all these different Seattle legends about what it should look like. And we get a sea troll named Boy. I know I called it Sea Boy, but I think it's just Boy, like a boy out to sea. You don't seem all that impressed, CJ.
I'm just happy to welcome a new mascot to the NHL family, my friend. You don't have any
opinions. You don't have any thoughts.
Not really. I'm always going to be I'm an OG fan of SJ Sharkey down there in San Jose.
That's your dog.
He's my man. Good dude.
Are you trying to just be loyal to him?
And I should know this, but I think he might be the only mascot they've had. Like, he's been doing it for like 20 plus years. And it's a pretty physically demanding job. Like, he repels from the ceiling sometimes. And even once got caught up there. So it's not just for taking pictures with the children or appearing at community events. I mean, there's some athleticism involved here. So I'm just glad to have another mascot. They usually get their shine at the All-Star game. There's usually some sort of mascot on ice event. And, Seattle could have chosen from a lot of different things, right? They could have went with many things live in the sea. So I think that would have been a lot of different brainstorming that went into birthing Boy into the universe. But welcome aboard.
I was going to make this all about just like NHL mascots and stuff. And then I discovered something while researching yesterday. The highest paid mascot in the NBA is Rocky the Mountain Lion for the Denver Nuggets, who makes more than 10 times the average pay for professional NBA mascots, which is around $60,000. Rocky the Mountain Lion for Denver makes $625,000 a year.
Come on. Is this confirmed?
This is from the Sports Business Journal.
Okay.
They seem to know what they're talking about.
Is there a reason why that one mascot would make so much more than the others?
It is not entirely clear at this moment. I'm not sure. We were talking about it a little bit, but it's not aware to me if the person because sometimes it's more than one person, or it's just if they own the rights to that character or anything like that. Like, that's like $625,000 to be a mascot for a professional team. I mean, what are we even doing here?
Well, look, first of all, I'm all for people earning their chip, man. So
we all about earning chip over here, but if you were able to make over $500,000,
I'm not going to say what the number should be that the mascot should be earning, because who am I to say that? But I will say this: how is anyone earning more than the Raptor, man? Have you ever been to a Raptors game? The Raptor is the king. Yeah. Like, this guy is doing stunts. He blew out his knee a couple years ago. Like, he's crazy good, the Raptor. So, I mean, again, I don't know what the top number should be, but whatever it is, the Raptor should be making it.
According to the Sport Business Journal's top 5, the Raptor is not in the top 5. Rocky the Mountain Lion is first at $625K. Harry the Hawk makes $600,000. Benny the Bull for the Chicago Bulls, $400,000. Go the Gorilla for the Phoenix Suns, $200,000. And then Hugo the Hornet for the Charlotte Hornets, $100,000. So
it makes you think there should almost be a union for the mascots.
There should be.
Seriously, if you look back in time, like, the disclosing salaries for players, really helped drive up salaries at a certain point in time. You wonder if maybe they could benefit from you know, it seems like that's a huge discrepancy between what the top two guys or two mascots are making to the next, to the next, to the next.
And that's for NBA salaries. We haven't even, like, I can't even find numbers if you want it to be an NHL mascot. So see the Boy starting off at the beginning of his tenure. I can't imagine Boy is starting off with the most competitive salary. And what does someone like Gritty get, who is actually starting to make TV appearances? It was actually made an appearance on the new ABC show Abbott Elementary the other day. UP, which is like an icon in Montreal. Like, how much money should UP be? How much money should UP making?
Well, they should all be below SJ Sharkey. I'll tell you that much.
So SJ Sharkey, like, if SJ Sharkey makes at least like $100,000, like, I'd be really impressed.
It's hard to talk about money. Like, I don't know what, like, you know, if we actually want to get like slightly serious here, I mean, the mascot works a lot.
Yes.
And it's an extension of the organization, right? It's something I think generally geared towards kids. You know, but it's sort of getting the organization's, it's an extension of selling your brand in a sense. And so I don't know, like, I'm not gonna put any guardrails on what they should be making. I'm glad to hear that the Denver Nuggets mascot's making coin. I just want to see more of the mascots getting into that price range. It's only fair.
It's only fair. We will be talking more about money with Sports Interaction and some NHL future bets. We will also be discussing the latest when it comes to Hockey Canada. And today, big podcast for us, because we are going to ask one big question about every NHL team this week. Today, we're going to focus on Eastern Conference teams. Western Conference teams will come on Thursday. But today, we are going to ask one big question about each Eastern Conference team. But we're going to do that well on the other side of our Sports Interaction segment with David Bastl. He's coming on to hang out with us. If you are partaking in Sports Interaction, 19 and over, we ask that you play responsibly, and there will be a link to responsible gaming strategies in the description of the show. Welcome to You Can Bet That with David Bastl. Shout out to you, DB, for hanging out with us today. Always great to see your face.
Yeah. How you guys doing today?
Man, we're doing pretty well, man. Remember to hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all of your gaming needs. You have something really interesting up on the Sports Interaction website in terms of your NHL futures bets. Yes, no bets on making the playoffs. It seems as if you guys are totally dead set on the Flames, the Oilers, and the Leafs to make the playoffs, which,
yep,
to be
already
fair,
have those X's right beside the names. Yep.
Exactly. If you ask a lot of people, I'm sure they might agree. There seems to be some debate with the Winnipeg Jets, the Sens, and the Canucks. Let's tackle those three teams individually. The Canadiens seem like a long shot, and
yes,
they're kind of playing towards not making the playoffs. But let's start with the Winnipeg Jets.
Yes, let's talk about the Jets. Well, right now at Sports Interaction, more of the bets coming on the no side that they will not make the playoffs, but it's pretty close when you look at some of the odds. Right now, yes is paying 2.68, no is paying 1.52. Tough Central Division, CJ. You got the defending Stanley Cup champs in there. You got teams like the Wild and the St. Louis Blues that are probably pretty close to, marking that X beside their name. And there's only so many spots. So I'm leaning on the side of playoff possibility, playoff contender myself. I think they could fall into a wild card spot, but they're going to have some competition as well. There's a lot of teams that are Jet-like in that conference itself.
Well, but they got the new head coach bounce. I feel like, Rick Bowness has been someone, especially in Dallas, improved the team's defensive play. That's been something I think that it's haunted the Jets to some degree. Just a team that has never done very well controlling shot share. Still got a great goalie. Still have lots of guys who can score. I don't know. I think that there's some value to be found on that particular play right there.
Yeah.
What about the Vancouver Canucks? Let's stay in the Western Conference before we get to the East.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they're more of a likelihood right now, Julian, to make the postseason. They're paying 1.86 for a yes to make the postseason, 2.03 as a no. So slight lean to the yes. And I think a lot of that, CJ, is the Pacific Division itself, you have a couple teams up top, and then it kind of drops off a little bit. Canucks played at 106-point pace under Bruce Boudreau when he was, reassigned to the team in the middle of the season. I'm just wondering, they have the right goaltender in place. Can they make the postseason as well?
They certainly can. It's a tough division in a sense. I mean, where's Vegas at in all this? I would think that we're going to see a better season out of them than what they had last year, where a lot of things conspired against them, starting with the health of their players. But they've also lost Robin Leonard for the season. I mean, it's a bit of it's a tough division to handicap. I think we do like Edmonton and Calgary as teams that are, right at the top of that division. But I think you can make a case for 3 or 4 teams to come in number 3.
Finally, the Ottawa Senators.
Yes, Ottawa Senators right now. No, yes to make it is a 319. No, you will not make it a 140. So more leaning on the no, but optimism. A lot of free agent signings, a lot of new players in place. You got some goaltending stability as well. You have a pair of goaltenders that look like they're going to be okay. There's a lot of, I was just in Ottawa this weekend visiting some friends and going to a wedding. There's a lot of hope, CJ, in Ottawa that this team's actually going to maybe get that number 4 spot in that, Atlantic Division.
Well, I don't want to be the doomsdayer here, but I just don't see, I don't see where they find themselves, leapfrogging 3 or 4 teams in the Atlantic from last year. I think that unfortunately they're in a really tough division. I don't see a lot of fallback. I mean, maybe you can argue Florida's not quite as dominant, but they won the President's Trophy last year. They're not tumbling all the way down the standings. So, I think the Senators are going to have a tough time making the playoffs, but I also, in saying that, come on, it's nice to see some optimism there. It's nice that they had an aggressive offseason, and clearly they're a better team this season than they were last year. I just don't know if they got good enough.
Hope is a very dangerous thing. That being said, totally understanding of why Ottawa Senators fans would believe in their team this year. DB, thank you as always for joining us on You Can Bet That. Don't forget to check out sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all the best odds before game, in game, and the best props. sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. DB, we'll talk to you soon.
Take care, guys.
Before we get to our one big question segment, we did mention there was an update on the dossier of Hockey Canada we'd like to mention. Coming out this morning in the Globe and Mail, an article coming out about how Hockey Canada, which was already in trouble for their National Equity Fund, which I believe was also revealed by the Globe and Mail, that they were using that as a way to funnel in funds to cover sexual assault claims and other lawsuits. It looks as if there is a second similar fund called the Participants Legacy Trust Fund, which Globe and Mail is saying that Hockey Canada has also used for those purposes. This comes just on the eve of Andrea Skinner, the current interim president of Hockey Canada, Bob Nicholson, former president, CEO, Michael Brindamore, supposed to be summoned before Parliament. We've heard some reactions from different players about the recent events that have come out with Hockey Canada's handling of the 2003 and the 2018 sexual assault allegations faced upon them. It's going to be another busy week when it comes to discussing Hockey Canada. But this latest story from the Globe and Mail, a bit of a bombshell to read this morning.
Well, and there's one obvious question. Why wasn't this disclosed at the previous round of parliamentary hearings that were held, over the summer? And, I'm sure a lot of MPs are wondering that. I'm sure that will be brought up Tuesday when there is another round of questions to be lobbed in the direction of decision makers. I mean, unfortunately, it's a different group of speakers this time around than what you had last time. It's not, say, Scott Smith, who's currently at the head of the organization. So maybe that question won't be entirely resolved or answered on Tuesday. But, I think that's my first instinct, Julian, when I see this report, is just wondering, why wasn't that disclosed and what else might there be? I think it's fair to think that way. And, quite clearly, we haven't reached the bottom of this issue in any way, shape, or form. And so be interested to see what comes out of Tuesday's session.
Yeah, we're going to be hopefully keeping watchful eyes on that session on Tuesday. Just again, another very busy week ahead on the matters with Hockey Canada. So yeah, we want to spend a bit of time on that ahead of this segment that we wanted to. It's been a bit of a work in progress with it. Remember, this was supposed to be this is supposed to be something completely different. This was supposed to be, storylines, top 3 storylines, and now it has kind of evolved into one big question surrounding every NHL team. And we're going to do Eastern Conference teams today, and then we're going to do Western Conference teams on Thursday. Just figured just a lot better as opposed to doing 32 teams all at once.
Yeah, it would be a lot of material to get through. It would be a 4-hour podcast. So we did 32 teams at one go. It's actually a good exercise, though, I think, Julian, to get your mind around the league in some ways. I mean, naturally, there's certain teams you focus on, maybe teams that made a lot of news over the summer, teams, closer to where you live, where you hear more of the day-to-day news. But it actually was good to work through and be like, oh yeah, this happened there, and what's there. And so I've tried to come up with some of the questions are actually a heart of the matter type of question, I would say, like a really fundamental question for that team. And some of them are a little bit more, not goofy, but maybe less important, but sort of interesting. So I've tried to strike a balance there. It can't all just be about, can this team make the playoffs or not?
Would you want to go at it alphabetical order, or is it okay if I go division by division?
Go division by division, just because that's the way I did it mentally.
Perfect. Would you rather start with the Metropolitan or the Atlantic Division?
Let's go Metro.
All right. I'm going to go off of the order from how teams did last year, top to bottom. So let's start with the Carolina Hurricanes. What's the big question you have for them?
So for me, this is one of those ones, just as a matter of preamble, that it's not necessarily the fundamental question for the team, but it's the biggest question I have for them. And, I'm wondering entering the season if Andrei Svechnikov can take another step. And I would suggest to you the answer to that is probably yes. He's still 22 years old. He had a good season last year, 30 goals, a little below a point per game. But when you sort of step back and look at the Hurricanes year last year, I mean, they didn't get enough scoring when it mattered. I think that was part of, the impulse to go trade for Max Pacioretty in the offseason. Unfortunately, of course, Pacioretty has since suffered an injury training and is going to miss, about half the regular season. But, I think that there's sort of, Carolina has been an elite team in the league for a couple of years now anyway. Really has all the pieces, I think, to, again, be a top team. I mean, they won the Metropolitan Division last year in the regular season, but you wonder if the goals are going to be there. And so that's where I look at a guy like Svechnikov, just with, player I think has a huge ceiling. If he can take another step forward, if he can become a little bit more dominant and dynamic in the offensive zone, I think that would go a long way for the Hurricanes and having an even better year. But, big picture, I don't really have any concerns about the direction of the team. I see no reason to think that they won't be a top team again. But you're wondering, where can they find a little bit more to break through, I guess, to play 3 rounds or 4 rounds in the playoffs, to be a true Stanley Cup contender. And I think, if you look at a young player that I think could still pop even more than he has, Svechnikov is that guy.
Okay. What about the team that beat the Carolina Hurricanes in the second round of the playoffs last year, the New York Rangers?
For the Rangers, I want to know, can they improve the process? Because if you look at last year in regular season, their expected goals, their Corsi, all below 50%. And, I think that we can look at this roster and again, it's hard to poke holes in it. I mean, Igor Shesterkin has clearly emerged as one of the NHL's best goaltenders, was its best goaltender last year in terms of the voting at award time for the Vezina Trophy. Love the blue line. Chris Kreider scored 50. You've got Panarin and Zibanejad. You got the young guys line. I mean, like this team, this organization has everything you'd want to see, and added Vincent Trocheck as well over the summer. But, I'm wondering if they can have a style of play that will lead to more likelihood of even more success than they've had in the past, because I think that they played with fire a bit at times last season. Maybe we're guilty of relying on their goaltender too much. Again, that's something you can do. Goaltender is part of the team. It's not necessarily, that they should automatically lose games because they're giving up more shots. But I think that if they're going to take the next step as an organization and truly be a cup contender, you want to see them controlling the games a little bit more. And so that's the question I have for them is, can they do that, or do they just rely on this high skill at basically offensive positions and in net to get by? And so, sometimes that's what the regular season is about. I don't think there's any question the Rangers are going to be a playoff team. I do think they're going to have another good, strong year, but can they take a step forward in how they play? That's the question I'm looking to see answered or not, because I think it'll give us a good hint heading into the playoffs, the likelihood of them going on a long run.
Next one, the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Can they hold off Father Time a little bit more? Right. And, this is probably an evergreen question for the Penguins. It boggles my mind, Julian. This is the 18th NHL season for Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang. I mean, these guys, they're truly, I'm not going to say they're at the end. Malkin's just signed a contract extension. Chris Letang's extension was for 5 years in the offseason. So obviously they intend to play for a lot longer, but we are getting down to the point where each season could sort of theoretically be one of the last you see them either as impactful players or players at all in the league. And, I like the off season in the sense that it almost felt right that Malkin and Letang are going to have a chance to retire as Penguins. Pretty cool that you can have three key members of an organization in Crosby, Malkin, and Letang, who I expect will play their whole careers in Pittsburgh. We'll see. Sometimes that changes. Maybe Sidney Crosby for his last season is going to want to go somewhere else. It's a little premature to get too far down that rabbit hole. But, when it comes to this season, those players are still so important in terms of the salary cap that they eat up, in terms of what they mean to the team. And can they produce? Can they extend this playoff streak, which is already at 16 seasons and counting for Pittsburgh, which is pretty remarkable in a hard salary cap league like the NHL has been during that time. And, if they stay healthy and they're still productive, I think the odds are pretty good. If Father Time gets its teeth into that team, I think it's going to be tough, even with guys like Jake Gensel and Brian Rust and other players that have become really good secondary players for them. I'm just not sure they're going to be able to carry the organization forward if Crosby, Malkin, and Letang aren't still key parts of what they're doing.
Father Time, we have to remember, is undefeated. They have to keep that in mind for a lot of these different teams. I wonder if you have to think about that as well for the Washington Capitals as well.
Yeah, if I was copying my own homework, I could just ask the same question. Instead, I'll pivot in a different direction, right? And when you look at Washington's offseason, the biggest move to me was bringing in Darcy Kemper, and so I wonder what can Darcy Kemper bring to this group, because last year the goaltending was a huge issue for the Capitals, and it felt like they were bouncing between Ilya Samsonov and Vitek Vanacek, and they could never find an answer. Like, it just felt like they would try one for a stretch, they try the other, and they never got to where they wanted to get to. And so I wonder, can Darcy Kemper off his cup year with Colorado stabilize that position? Maybe have that team win some games a different way, especially early in the year, right? Nicholas Backstrom is out, long term, but they're also starting the season without Tom Wilson. So those are two of their best forwards, and obviously two players that have been a part of that team's success. And so it's not just Father Time. It's can that signing that they made be impactful. They also brought in Dylan Strome to try to keep things stable down the middle. But I just wonder if Kemper can be a difference maker for them. If he can, maybe we're talking about them extending a playoff streak. But it's far from a certainty in my eyes as we enter the season that the Capitals are going to be back in the postseason, and so there's going to be a lot of pressure put on the goaltender.
The New York Islanders are next.
Was last year an anomaly? That's my question for the Islanders. Like, was that just a season after two, appearances in the Eastern Conference Final where everything went wrong, where they started, by playing a month of road games because their arena wasn't ready? They were one of the teams really hit big by COVID early in the season. That, they had a lot of things that I guess you could say, oh, this is just a crazy year, and that was a write-off. Or is it just a sign that the Islanders have bled a little bit too much talent? Because, I think a lot of people looked at that organization, looked at Lou Lamoriello over the summer and said, you need a bold move. You need to go out and get a Nazem Kadri or try to make that trade for Johnny Gaudreau or sign Gaudreau in free agency. get involved in the Kachuk thing. I mean, I think that people are looking for an impactful, especially at forward move, and it just didn't come. There really was no sizzle to the Islanders offseason. And so I can't watch that and then not come up with a more pressing question than, does that just mean last year was like this crazy year where everything conspired against them and they're going to get back to being a team that sort of is better than the sum of its parts? Or are they just on their way downhill and free falling? And I think we'll probably get an answer early in the year from the team. I think that a good start is imperative for them, with just the way last season just felt like it was lost before it even began. So, that's my thought heading into Islanders training regular season, and I don't have the answer yet. That's why we play the games.
That's why we play the games. Let's go to Johnny Hockey's new city, Columbus. What do you think about the Blue Jackets?
Well, the question has to be around Johnny Hockey, right? I mean, that was such a surprising move in a sense that they signed with Columbus. I'm wondering what kind of magic he can make with Patrik Laine. And, it looks like they're going to start on the top line together with the Blue Jackets. Would expect they'll spend a lot of power play time on the ice together. And when you have such a gifted playmaker and someone so known for a shot as Laine is, you can see on paper why that makes a lot of sense. Now let's see what happens in reality. And I think Columbus still has some strides to make. They're weak down the middle compared to a lot of teams they're competing against. I think Boone Jenner will probably be their top line center to start the year. And so, there's going to be a lot of offensive pressure in my mind on Gaudreau and Laine to produce for them. And maybe they can make some magic together. So that's what I'm most curious about seeing with Columbus and really focusing on Gaudreau in particular too, though, because he made kind of a bold decision, you might call it, in the offseason. And there's a certain level of expectation, even though he's moved out of a Canadian hockey market, but there's still going to be a lot of eyes on what he does in his new home. And clearly the Blue Jackets are expecting a lot of him with the contract they gave him.
Let's go to the New Jersey Devils.
Can New Jersey get a save, my man? Because I'll tell you, New Jersey, to me, they're the team I've sort of identified as a sleeper team for me entering the season. Like, I could see them, for example, if Washington falls back and if the Islanders are just sort of in that meh zone, I could see New Jersey climbing up and making the playoffs this year. And when you look at them last year, to me, they're a team that actually produced fairly average results, but they had the worst team save percentage in the entire NHL. And look, there's no guarantee that's going to be improved. In one breath, I'm talking about the Capitals' struggles in net. Well, who did they go and get in the offseason? They went and got Vitek Vanacek. So, maybe they're going to find similar problems with him that the Capitals had, or not. I mean, as we know, the goaltending position, can be so unpredictable. They also have Mackenzie Blackwood and Jonathan Bernier. But I just see New Jersey as a team on the rise in a lot of ways. Jack Hughes looks like a guy ready to pop even more than he did last year. And he had a great season last year. Obviously, was interrupted by an injury. I think that they have a strong blue line. Maybe not enough difference makers up front, but, they got Andre Palat in the offseason. I think the Devils are going to be a tough team this year. But, to me, it's going to come down to if they get enough saves to allow some of their strong team play to come through. And so that's the question I'll be asking. And as I say, I'm not presupposing the answer, but I do think that they are a team poised to take a big step this season from where they've been, and maybe one that'll surprise a few people that aren't as high on them as I am.
I can't wait to know what question you have for the Philadelphia Flyers as we round up the Metro.
Is John Tortorella's head going to explode? I mean, you have to.
I say yes.
You almost have to have some fun with this one because, not to make light of the Flyers situation, they've had a really tough run of injuries, going back to last year. They're starting another season now with Sean Couturier's status very much in question. There was some thought he might need another back surgery. The second opinion revealed that he might not, but he's still, week to week they're calling it. And who knows if that becomes months. I mean, unfortunately, Sean Couturier, a dominant two-way forward in the league, it just, reached a really tough, debilitating injury. And it's just hard to see Philadelphia getting on without him. Now, if there's one thing Tortorella's done well in his career, and I look back at his Columbus days as obvious of this, I think he does it generally as a coach, has been a coach that's been able to pull a little bit more out of a team that you're overlooking. And so maybe he can get them to tighten up defensively and win some 2-1 games. But, I think that it's going to be a stressful year in Philadelphia. He's already made comments, entering the season about concerns about the dressing room. I think that it's sort of a get your popcorn ready kind of situation, because there's the possibility of fireworks, and I just don't see a team that's built to have success, especially unfortunately with the bad run of health they've had. I mean, this just looks like a different team with Sean Couturier playing minutes, and we don't know if he's going to play. Ryan Ellis only played a handful of games last season, and basically don't expect him to be back on the ice. And so, I think it's going to be a rocky year in Philadelphia, and they have a pretty flammable coach who might make it interesting if it doesn't go the way he wants it to.
I'm still counting on some kind of John Tortorella gritty encounter before it's all said and done. I want it. Let's go to the Atlantic Division.
Heavy focus on mascots in this episode. I love it.
Yeah, kind of weird. We don't have to focus too much longer on mascots. What about the Florida Panthers, the reigning President's Trophy winners?
My question is, what can their mascot do to help them improve on last season? No, I want to know what Matthew Tkachuk looks like in Panthers colors. I mean, this is a big change they had in the offseason, right? They scored a ton of goals last year. They were the President's Trophy winners. I know it went south in a hurry in the second round against Tampa. But, this is a team that made some pretty big changes after that kind of year. And so, there's a lot of heat to my eyes on Tkachuk. I don't think it's just down to how many points does he score. I mean, I think that when you make the trade that they made, they're doing it to almost have an attitude shift, to have, someone who plays a certain style. Jonathan Huberdeau had a magnificent season last year, but you're not looking at him to finish checks or bring some snarl to the game, I think, the way you want from Matthew Tkachuk. But, I think it's a pretty big risk from Bill Zito and the Panthers front office. Now it's a front office that's shown itself. I think that they're more risk averse than a lot of teams. It's really proven to be their benefit, but entering the season, it looks like they're going to have players like Rudolph Balcers, Colin White in the top six, potentially Carter Verhaeghe back there. He's been a great story the way his career has risen, but it's not a team full of sure things as great as last year was. And so how does it work with Matthew Tkachuk? Did they actually get better? Probably not a question we're going to get an answer to until the playoffs, because I think it's a playoff motivated move. But we're going to see in the regular season, there's not a lot of ways to improve on the year they had last year, but I guess the question is how much of a fallback as a regular season team are they going to have? Because I just don't see them as being better, but they may be better suited for the playoffs. And that's obviously the thinking that went into the decisions made.
The Toronto Maple Leafs.
Now there's an obvious one that's sitting in front of us. And so I don't want to go too obvious, because we've talked about the guys who stopped the puck for that team already. My question for them, and it's entirely immaterial, probably in the big scheme of things, but I want to know if Austin Matthews can chase 50 goals in 50 games. And the reason I ask that question is, I mean, it's clear that he can. He scored 51 goals in a 50-game stretch during last season, but only 5 players in history have ever scored 50 goals in their team's first 50 games to start the year. I mean, that's the sort of the traditional measure of that achievement. And the guys that have done it are the absolute legends of the sport. You're talking Maurice Richard, Mike Bossy, Mario Lemieux, Wayne Gretzky, and Brett Hull. I mean, some of the greatest goal scorers that have ever played the game. And it's clear to me that Matthews can at least have some thought that he's in that conversation after a 60-goal season. And so I get it. We're going to decide what are the Leafs. Again, they're a team we got to wait until the playoffs, I think, before we really are getting down to the heart of the matter. Did they get better? I know we can focus on the goaltending, but I think it'd be pretty cool if Matthews could give that a run. Ovechkin was semi-close in the past, but he never truly gave it a run. I wonder if healthy Austin Matthews to start the season can make that happen and, give us something to focus on that isn't involve a goaltender or what happens, once they get to mid-April, because there's 82 games to be played between then and now.
The Tampa Bay Lightning.
Do they have any juice left? I almost look at the Lightning and it's like, I don't really have any concerns about them. I still think that they're the team that's won 2 of the last 3 Stanley Cups and got to game 6 of the 3rd Stanley Cup played in that 3-year run. So I don't think that I'm not forecasting a deep fall. I don't think that there's one acquisition or one loss that's going to tell the story of, are they going to be better or worse? I really think it's just like, what do they have left as a group, as a team? Do they have that push still? Did that loss to Colorado in the final, is it going to be a source of motivation? Do they feel like it was their Stanley Cup and they had to go watch another team paraded around their rink, back in June? And so, that to me is sort of the question for the Lightning, because there's no reason to think they won't be a great team again. It would take something very unexpected to have them in danger of missing the playoffs for me, even as strong as the Atlantic Division is. And so, I want to just see what they have left, emotionally, physically, and all those things, because no team has played anywhere near as many games as they have since the COVID pause hit in March 2020.
The Boston Bruins.
I can't ignore the obvious in this one. I've tried to get cute with some other ones, but I mean, how much is missing Brad Marchand and Charlie McAvoy going to hurt this team? That's the question for me with Boston. I actually like their offseason. Like, I think Pavel Zacha is a nice acquisition for them. Bringing back David Krejci, there's an unknown there. He spent last year in the Czech Republic. He's 36, 37 years old. So he's certainly, there's some risk with a player like that, but I think Boston's still going to be a good team. I just don't know how to quantify what it's like missing, a top line winger on your team and Marchand and your best defenseman for a period of time, with those players recovering from off-season surgeries to start the year. And you mix in a new coach with Jim Montgomery. There's just some uncertainty about how everyone will adapt to that situation. But I still think the pieces are there for the Bruins to be a good team. It is sort of a last dance kind of feel to this season. Patrice Bergeron took a long time to decide about his future, and then he signed a 1-year deal. You bring back Krejci. You're in the last season of David Pasternak's contract, at least as we're recording now. I know there have been discussions with Bruins management about an extension for him, but right now it's lining up that the what's left of the core of the last team that played in the Stanley Cup final in 2019 with this team. This is their last shot at it. So can they overcome those injuries? And if so, maybe they can write a nice final chapter.
By the way, Taylor Hall also on that injury list. He could be he's week to week with an injury, I believe.
Not good.
Nope, not good at all. The Buffalo Sabres are the next team.
I want to know what the Sabres, how ready Owen Power is to make a mark against NHL players. And, I don't think there's any reason to question or doubt that he's going to be an impactful defenseman in the league, but is it going to happen in November, or are we going to have to wait a couple seasons? And, this is sort of a rare, at least in recent times, first overall pick from 2021 that didn't jump right into the league last year. He went back and had another season at the University of Michigan, but he's played a lot of top level hockey. I mean, he's won a gold medal already at the Men's World Hockey Championship with Team Canada, played at the World Junior, he played at the Olympics. I know it wasn't NHL best on best, but obviously he's facing professionals in that case, and he's a big, strong guy. And so physically, you have to think he's ready to make a difference. And I think ultimately that's interesting just about the individual, because he's a first overall pick, but it's crucial to Buffalo because, to me, they were a team that really took a step last year. And so if they can add, say, someone who can play on their second pairing and make a difference as Owen Power, I think ultimately will, almost certainly. But if he can do that right away, I mean, that's a huge bonus to their program. It could put them in a position, in my eyes, to challenge for a playoff spot, especially if a team like Boston stumbles. And so, it's going to be an interesting year for the Sabres overall. And to me, there's no more interesting player than the former number 1 overall selection from 2021 who's going to get his first taste of NHL action.
The Detroit Red Wings.
Can they have a second scoring line? When I look at Detroit, that's been a big question for them. I mean, they've had Tyler Bertuzzi and Dylan Larkin and players that could put up decent offensive numbers, but they really, it went sideways pretty quickly if you went further down the lineup than their top line at any given moment. And so, I think that informed the decisions they made in the offseason. They signed Andrew Kopp to a big deal. They bring in David Perron off a great season in St. Louis. I mean, to me, that's done to try to have some sort of secondary scoring beyond their top offensive guys. And if they can, I think that they're in a position to certainly make a climb up the standings from where they've been. But if those signings don't pay off, and unfortunately Andrew Kopp's been out injured here during training camp, David Perron's just at an age. There's no guarantees for any player, but maybe there's a fall off for him, although he's just been so steady. I mean, I actually like the signing on a short-term deal that Detroit gave him. So if that happens, I think the Red Wings become a deeper, more dangerous team. But I still see ultimately some time needed with this group to get them to a point where we're talking about them being a difference or power in the division or all that sort of things. I mean, I think they're moving in the right direction, but if they can have that second scoring line, they're going to be a much tougher team to play against this year.
The Ottawa Senators.
Can they handle the expectations, man? Like this is, and I know we talked about it a little bit in the segment with David Bastl, but I mean, there's so much hype around this team, and I think it's great. Like I'm not hating on any fan for being excited about their team, and when you have an organization like the Senators that have sort of been notoriously cheap, that let Erik Karlsson and Mark Stone go, and you finally get now these players, the younger guys that have coming up, and they're getting big contracts, and they're bringing Claude Giroux and making deals. Like I get the excitement, but I think the reality here is they were 27 points behind the last playoff spot last year. Like that's like 5 football fields worth of like making up ground. Like I don't know that they've done enough to do that. I think should be very real concerns about their blue line. They have Travis Hamonic, Nikita Zaitsev among their top 6 as we're recording this now. I know management wants to make some changes there and maybe try to bolster that group, but it hasn't happened to this point. And so I'm just wondering if they can handle the weight of this expectations that they're all of a sudden going to be a must-watch team, a team that's going to make big strides. And so, I think it'll be an interesting season to watch play out in Ottawa. But, there's a reason why, look, they're the last team you're asking, or second last team they're asking about, because they were second last in the Atlantic Division last year. I have a hard time imagining the scenario where they actually live up to the hype around them just because they have so far to climb.
Last one for you, the Montreal Canadiens.
For me, it's what kind of magic can Marty St. Louis weave in his first full season as head coach? And you might think that's a weird way to look at it because we know the goal isn't to win a ton of games in Montreal. But I don't think there's another coach in the league like St. Louis. And it's purely just because of the experiences he's had as a player, right? He was the rare player that was both a healthy scratch at a point in his career who had to, enter the league on tryouts with teams who were cut from those tryouts. He had one with the Ottawa Senators that people might not even realize, and he was cut from that tryout before he ultimately had his first steps in the NHL with Calgary. And then he won a Hart Trophy, and he won the Art Ross Trophy as a league scoring leader. I mean, he had the gamut as a player. Then he was coaching teenagers after retiring from the NHL, and then all of a sudden he was behind the Canadiens bench. And I think when you hear the way he describes how he wants his players to play, the way he treats his players, the connection he has with guys, I think he has a certain emotional intelligence and understanding of what, the player that's his 13th forward is going through. And obviously what, say Cole Caulfield or Juraj Slafkovsky, what some of the younger star players are going through. And I think he's a compelling figure to watch in this league this year. He had a great quote last week, Julian. I don't know if you saw it, about, wanting to see the ceiling of players. He said, we're not worried about the floor of our young guys, especially. Like, we'll fix the floor. Like, show us the ceiling. Go out and make plays. Attack the game, right? That wasn't his exact quote, but that's how I'm interpreting what he's saying. And I just think it's a unique experiment with him as a head coach. And I actually believe that he might be a difference maker. I mean, it's no coincidence. Cole Caulfield had 35 points, I think, in 37 games to finish last season after that coaching change.
Really good last year.
Filled the net. And, I think it's pretty clear that the faith and what happened from his head coach was part of that. I mean, a lot was expected of Cole Caulfield last season, and he was snake bitten for half a year, and then he caught fire. And so while I don't think the Canadiens are going to make some miracle run towards the playoffs or anything like that, obviously they have some veteran guys that I think will be sold at the trade deadline, for more future pieces. I still think, for me, the biggest question is what can Marty St. Louis get out of this roster, and maybe some of the individual players he's going to work with, because he's a unique coach, and we only saw it for a couple months last year. Now this is a full year where he's getting his fingerprints on them in training camp and the early going and right into the season.
A really interesting story in Montreal. Really interesting stories across the Eastern Conference. And on Thursday, we will tackle the Western Conference teams and ask them one big question. Siege, we got time for a couple AskCJ questions?
We do. How did I do on the questions? Was that okay? Was that the
I really enjoyed it. They were really good. I really enjoyed it. I thought you were going to be more joking with more of these, but you actually asked some really pertinent questions for each of those NHL teams. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's really just trying to raise a thought about each team, right? Or about something that could happen. it's a fun exercise, and honestly, it's actually helpful for me to get my mind around what's going on in the league. So I'm looking forward to doing the Western Conference in a couple days.
Now, our next partner is a pretty cool product. Let's talk about Athletic Greens. If you're looking to get better gut health, more energy, or a stronger immune system in a really easy, natural way, you've got to check out Athletic Greens. I'm sure you'll agree that most of us are not huge fans of having to take a bunch of pills or vitamins in the morning, but with Athletic Greens, you can get rid of all of those extra vitamin bottles and finally make some room in your cabinet. Athletic Greens is an all-in-one solution that actually tastes good. You'll actually enjoy getting your daily vitamins in. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and even aging. All of the things. It's also lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or you are gluten-free. It also contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, or artificial anything, while still tasting good. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season just around the corner. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. No need for a million different pills and other supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do, go visit athleticgreens.com/Johnston. It's CJ's last name, athleticgreens.com/Johnston, to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Let's do the questions for Ask CJ from Insider J Money. Hello, my sweethearts. Now that Julian is a full-fledged team reporter, CJ, which press box arena city should Julian be looking forward to visiting the most? A top 3.
How about I attack it a little differently?
Sure.
I'll give you the press box that you should most be looking forward to, the arena you should most be looking for, and the city.
All right, cool.
Which is maybe not the exact spirit of the question, but
this is still pretty cool, though.
I think the press box you should most be looking forward to is Madison Square Garden. They redid the press box there as part of the wider arena upgrades they did in the last, I'm going to say 5, 6, 7 years. It is got to be one of the best viewing angles. Like, it's very close to the ice. They actually have TVs. It's a glass countertop that you work on with TVs in there. You can plug in and hear the commentary. Just a lot of little interesting things that you don't get in every building. And again, it's such a cool arena, great vibe in there, and it just feels like you're right on top of the ice. So that's a specific press box I love. I think there's all kinds of ways to take arena. There's so many great rinks and atmospheres in this league. But for me, I still love going to Vegas, man. And it's nothing to do with what you can do in the off work hours. That building rocks. Like, T-Mobile Arena, it's like going to a nightclub and a hockey game breaks out. And I think you'll have some fun when you go there, when you're not working, but when you go to the game, like, it's just hard not to be excited. And they've really done a nice job with their in-game experience. I think they just won another award for having the best in-game experience. So I think Vegas should be the city or the arena you're most looking forward to. And the city, I mean, I don't know where you've all traveled in your life, Julian. I don't know if you've been to Chicago, if you've been to New York before for fun. I mean, those are great cities. The West Coast trip is awesome. But I'm going to say Nashville is if you've never been to Nashville, it's a cool place to go to a game. It's really easy to get around. That's kind of the way I actually, when I'm just talking about a work trip, like, I love going to a city where you can stay in in a hotel that's a close walk to the arena, where there's sort of bars and restaurants that are fun and good food, but you can walk to those. Logistics become an issue, as I'm sure you're seeing. Like, you have to write so much. There's just a lot of demands on you that there's not a lot of time to squeeze in the fun moments. And I think Nashville, even if you're not normally a big country music fan, which I'm not normally, but when you're there, just like it just feels right. And so that would be the city vibe I'd most be looking forward to as you work your way around the league.
I really liked how you tackled that question. That was really cool to have it for each. I've never been to any of those cities. I've been to New York. Actually, yeah, I've been to New York. I've never been to Nashville though, and I've never been to Vegas. So hopefully, this year I will be able to take in the atmospheres from those respective cities. I would very much enjoy that. From Lotzi, in the spirit of best looking coaches, rank the best looking SDPN hosts. Are you allowed to rank yourself?
No, I mean, I shouldn't be at the top of that list anyway. I think I might go Jesse
There's
Blake.
one guy. Thank you. That is the pick. I was like, Jesse Blake is number one. Unanimous.
Julian, I'll put you number 2.
Oh, I know.
You're in the mix. You're in the mix.
I see.
I think I'll go Adam Wild number 3. He's got that newlywed glow these days.
He does.
He's looking great. I guess then it's going to be Dangle.
Damn.
Dangle's got that like,
Damn.
you know, father of a toddler chaos thing going on. Like I feel like his life must just, like I see him like posting pictures from his new blue room. Like the guy's in the middle of a move. Like he's not in the position to, you know, his looks are a secondary feature to all the chaos in his life right now.
Oh,
then I'm going to go Alan Walsh. And
you're going to rank Alan. Okay.
And I'm going to put myself last.
Nah, you shouldn't put yourself last. I was going to have you like behind Jesse at least.
Well, I'll take it, man. But that coaching list was crazy. Like it felt like the coach, like even understanding that, of course, looks and beauty, it's totally in the eye of the beholder. It's not but it felt like those coaches were just thrown into a randomizer. And the funniest part about it actually was some of the answers from around the league. Like I loved, like David Quinn said, like Derek Lalonde's number 3. He's like, I know Derek Lalonde. It should start with a 3, but there's got to be another number after it.
Oh yeah,
meaning 30, 31, or 32. Bruce Boudreau had a funny answer. DJ Smith had a funny answer. It was anyway. Look at, we got to. It's a long preseason, so that gave us like 3 days of content that I appreciated.
Last question for you from Zach off of Discord. Does a straw have 1 or 2 holes?
2 holes.
I mean, it's kind of like one big tunnel. It's like one big tunnel. I think it's 2 holes.
Because if it only had 1,
yeah,
at the bottom or the top, whichever, but it wouldn't be a tunnel. Like a tunnel requires 2 holes, right?
I think that makes a lot of common sense to me. Sometimes we get weird questions like that.
Well, the thing is we've had a much weirder question in recent memory. So that one didn't even make me flinch, but I'm pretty confident in the 2 holes answer.
You've been built up to get to this point. Another edition of the CJ Show in the books. Thank you all for listening and or watching, or however you consume this podcast. Siege, always a pleasure doing these shows with you. We will be back on Thursday with a new episode.
Can I ask one question before we go?
Of course you can.
How you doing, man? Like you're living in a new city, you got a new job. Like how you hanging in? Like is it treating you well out there?
It is treating me well out there, man. It's been really fun. It's been really cool being like covering an NHL team every day and just being on my own, like a new city and getting to know people. Like it's been a really fun experience. The one thing I think I'm really curious about how I'm going to handle is like the traveling in between. I know I'm not going to do a whole bunch of traveling, but like that's what I'm trying to brace myself for. Like, how am I going to be when I'm constantly on the go, going from like one city, then to another, and then back? Like, that's what I'm curious about. But otherwise, I think I've been pretty good.
My only piece of advice is you got to get sleep when you can, because you're going to be tired perpetually. There's no way around it. The games are played at night. The flights happen in the morning. You got to write the next day usually, or do it. Like, it doesn't ever stop. It's a ton of fun. Like when you're doing it, especially when you're a little younger as you are, when you're doing it for the first time, like you can't believe someone pays you to do that's your job. But sleep is hard to come by. So if you get like an off day, like just sleep till noon. Like don't even apologize to anybody. Just you got to get your rest in because it's a long season.
Advice I will take to heart. I normally try to do that with sleeping, where like you don't see me before noon on days I don't have to do anything. But I think especially in this job, I'm going to do that a lot. I'm going to try to sleep as much as I can. But nah, man, it's been really fun so far. It's only been like 2 weeks since I've really like settled in, but I'm really enjoying the experience so far. It's been really fun.
Awesome.
And I'll have more stories. I'll have more stories throughout the year. I know a lot of people are asking like, hey, we want to know what's up in Calgary. How's that going? Like, there will be more stories throughout the year. I promise.
Well, just wait till I come and I find my friend with the edibles, and who knows where it goes next.
Oh boy, I think we better leave it there before we get ourselves in any more trouble. Big money, CJ. For CJ, I'm Julian saying so long, and be mindful of what you consume before going to an NHL.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Jillian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.